Hi, I'm Josh. This is my channel, Newtons per second. Welcome, everyone. In this video, I wanted to go over the cost of doing your level 3 certification. And I know there's other videos out there that have covered this. I wanted to share my perspective of going through this process. Last year, I attended LDRS 42 in Potters, New York, and that's where I achieved my level 3 certification. So in this video, I just kind of want to go over like my parts list, where I bought this stuff, where I could have saved money, or you could swap parts in and out to make the total cost a little more affordable. It all depends on your budget. Again, there's a lot of other people out there posting, what they spent or these projections, and I just want to share my experience and what I went through. How I have this set up on the Word document is it's in sections. So I break it in groups and I slowly add everything together. So this first part here is the order from Lock Precision. That is the cardboard mount tubing. You got your couplers, your stiffy tube. You got the airframes and the nose cone. And I can bring up that order. Here we go. You can see right here, I started it on my project on October 13th, 2023. That's my order. And as soon as I came in, I got busy. Got busy with the process. I had my packet passed into my L3 mentor. So you can see the total cost with shipping is $338.18 from Lock Precision. And now I'm going to move down. I got wood for the plywood fins. Now, this was a Home Depot trip. Plywood for the center rings. The Bondo fiberglass. Again, I didn't have West Systems at the time, and I used Bondo fiberglass and resin. So there's the resin. I bought two quarts, I believe. That was $50. They didn't have the 1 gallon. I didn't think I was going to need a 1 gallon, but yeah, that stuff goes quick. So hindsight, I probably should have bought the 1 gallon. All I used to wrap the tubes, lock tubes, is 4-ounce fiberglass cloth. I bought 5 packs, which came out to $30. Bought some peel ply from Amazon. I got a roll of that for $34. Something else too about these fins, they're just regular fins. They're just regular, plywood, 3/8 plywood. To strengthen them up, I used carbon fiber on the fins, and also I did a double wrap of fiberglass. So I took the cheaper wood and made it really strong with that, the carbon fiber and the fiberglass. Let's see. I did have a few containers of the BSI epoxy. West Systems, I did use that 610 on the fin fillets. The list goes on and on here. Aeropack retainer. I'll just slowly scroll through this stuff. A lot of this is the U-bolts. This is a lot of hardware I'm buying. And, it's a combination of getting stuff from eBay, Amazon, my local hardware store. So I'll just keep scrolling down through this. And I'm looking for another subtotal here. So here's paint, this threaded rod. I'm kind of going through this quick. I'll go back, but I just want to show you guys like how much money this costs. Subtotal so far is $2,084. That's with the lock, order, Home Depot, local hardware store, ordering, the hardware from gear from different places. Here's the spray, different spray paints. I got a custom decal cut. So I'm already at $2,084. Recovery gear, I do make my own parachutes, with the Happy Shoots. So a lot of this, like homemade 12-foot elliptical parachute, it cost me $130 in materials, and I only use tubular webbing, nylon for the shock cord, real cheap homemade drogue. You know, I sold a lot of this stuff. Large rail buttons that came from my local, my L3CC, Wildman, Connecticut. He has a lot of supplies on his truck too. So the total cost for me was $2,356 for this L3 certification. Now I just kind of like blew through this list really quick. I'll go back. Okay, so now we're back to looking at the lock precision order. Now you have some choices. I like custom making my rockets. Everything back here, these 7.5-inch kits, they're all custom made. The red one back here is actually a sonotube rocket. That's only half the section there with the nose cone. It's all custom parts, and even the nose cone is 3D printed. I'll have to cover a video or make a video covering that rocket construction, and it's a cluster project. It's got a central 54 to 38s on the outboards, and that's kind of like my intro to air starting. Here's part of the Jupiter 4, my level 3 rocket. Here's the other half of this rocket goes, or this no, or that body airframe goes on top of that red rocket. So there's a few more 7.5-inch kits, but they're all custom. Whether I get my parts from Lock or they're a sonotube or something, that's what I enjoy. That's what I feel comfortable with. Some people don't, so you might want to buy a kit. Let's go online here. We'll look at Lock. So they have some excellent like L3 projects. You have the Skinwalker, and this has everything you pretty much could. Yeah, it's a complete package. So I mean, this is a really good price. You know, $463. Let's see what else we have. You know, the Bruiser EXP. This is the full dual deploy. These kits are all 7.5-inch diameter. I think that's a really good L3 project. It's kind of draggy. You put a 75 millimeter M motor in there, like anything for the 5120 case, M1500 or the M1780, the M was it the 1297? I mean, you're only going like 6,000 feet, and that's really manageable. You're really not going to lose your rocket. It's nothing crazy. What's another one here? The Force 10. I mean, that's an awesome rocket. You know, they're all priced about the same thing. These are nice builds. So here's that price point. You know, you're talking almost $500. Probably shipping, you're talking another $100 in shipping for these things. Now we can hop over to Wildman and look at their kits. And if you want to go fiberglass, you probably want to go, with like a nice 6-inch kit. And if you look here, like the Ultimate Dark Star, it's $822. Ultimate Wildman, $786. You get the Demon, $786. So, your average cost is almost about $800 for a 6-inch kit. Unless you join, you could save money by joining Wildman. There's a membership, and you'll get a break on most of his stuff. I think some of these 786 kits, if you have the membership, it's like $30 a year. The 786, I believe, is closer to $700. So right away, you're saving a lot of money. And that's the other thing to think about too is, who has the deals like Wildman. He's got a great membership program. He gives you a break on a lot of things, a lot of prices. That's just 2 companies right there. There's a lot of other companies out there that have really nice kits. But I'm just more familiar with Wildman or Lock Precision. But again, for me, it's the custom. And you saw the cost factor. It's $333, but I had to buy a lot of hardware. So there's a little comparison right there between 2 major companies. And when I'm doing scratch build, I spent $333. And these kits are like Locks about $500 plus shipping. $450 to $500 plus shipping. Wildman, you're talking with the 6-inch kits about $700-ish plus shipping. Again, Yeah, that's 333, but I had to buy hardware. I had to make my parachutes. I had, so the costs probably about the same. I don't think I really saved a lot of money, but what I was able to do is pick the type of hardware I wanted. I wanted all stainless steel stuff. I wanted a certain parachute. I'm gonna hand make it. Every piece that I picked out is something I wanted in that rocket. The decals, I wanted it a certain way. So there's pros and cons. Honestly, I don't think scratch building your rocket really saves you much money, unless you go really cheap on your hardware. Then you might, but I didn't. Everything I have, the U-bolts, the quick links, everything's stainless steel. The bolt or like the nuts and washers, they're all stainless steel. So yeah, it gets expensive. Okay, so we're back to the list here, and I'm gonna go through things a little bit slower, break things down a little bit more, where I got the parts, where you could have saved money. And before I get started, if you guys are interested on the build, it's I'll put a link up at the end of the video and in the description. I called it the Journey to Level 3. It's a whole, it's about 5-6 videos of the build leading up to the certification flight day, LDRS 42. All right, we covered this lock precision stuff here. This purchase pretty decent. I don't need to go over this again. This 333. I had to buy more stuff. This is just basic. Your airframes and motor tubes and whatnot. Gonna scroll down here again. The plywood fins. All this plywood, the Bondo, that was Home Depot. You know, I feel like those prices are pretty good. Let's see, carbon fiber, that was eBay. Now we're at the epoxy part. Now look what I did. I'm gonna highlight this. I bought, I think it's BSI has different size tubes that you got your hardener and your resin. I bought the biggest containers that they sold, which is like 13 ounces in each container. So I bought two 30-minute versions and I bought one 15-minute. And I spent $81. Yeah, don't do this. Don't do what I did. I didn't have any experience with West Systems or any good epoxy like that. You're better off buying a quart of West Systems or the gallon. Again, if you had that much of it, if you bought the 1 gallon, you would have more than enough anyways to glass your project if you want to glass. So I spent on resin 50 plus, yeah, right here, Bondo resin. I bought two $25 containers. That's 2 quarts, and then another $81. So you're talking, $131 I spent on. Not really, BSI is nice, but now I am experienced with West Systems, and looking back at it, I should have just went with that. I bought the 1 gallon container and the hardener that goes with it. I mean, that's a ton of epoxy, and that's about almost $200. You might as well do that. And then I did end up buying the West Systems towards the end when I got to the fillets. A friend told me about the West Systems, that 610 epoxy. You put it on your caulking gun, and man, that stuff is awesome. You need to do it in warmer weather. I was trying to use it in cold weather, and it has a mixing nozzle. I had a really tough time getting that to push through all that. I ended up just squeezing it into a container and then hand mixing it. But if you have a nice warm day, that stuff should mix through pretty easy. It's very, very thick. It doesn't run. You can do all your fillets at once without any risk. All right, so T-nuts for the upper airframe and the bolts. That was just a local hardware store. Aero pack, a retainer, plus shipping. That was bought from Chris rockets, and because I believe my local vendor didn't have that. And then stainless steel bolts and washers and nuts for upgrading the Aeropack retainer, $15. So the stainless steel bolts, washers, nuts upgrade for the Aeropack retainer. What that is about is Aeropack, their flange that you put over your motor tube is made to be removable. My L3CC did not like that. He said just upgrade it by getting stainless steel bolts, nuts and washers, and then before you glue the rear centering and the aft ring, you bolt this thing in, and there's no way for that flange to come out. I guess the way Aeropack has it, with their system, you can literally take that flange and put it from rocket to rocket. But he feels like, where it's removable, it's not a permanent fixture. So, not a big deal. They're not super expensive. Okay. So, Aeropack adapter, I did buy that for my Wildman, Connecticut. And the Raz 75, I bought that from Wildman, Connecticut, my L3CC. Okay, so right here, this is what I want to talk about. The Aerotech 6400 motor case system. I did get a deal through Wildman, and that's $610. My original, now you can cut the cost of this. I'm going to do a two-part here. So and then you have the motor I started with. So I got the M1780 New Thunder motor for $280. That motor, I believe, retails for around like $375. I got a Black Friday sale, so that's really not fair. Like, you'd have to wait till you see a deal for this. Like I said, normally it's like $375. If you join the Wildman in the membership, you might save some money there. You might be able to get it closer to like $320 or something like that. So if you add these together, you're talking like $1,000 if you want a reload system. So I'm going to hop over to, let's see, we'll just go to the Wildman site here. And originally, this was the motor I was going to use. Yes, the M1350 75 millimeter DMS motor. So that's just a single use. You burn it, and that's it. It's done. But you can see the cost here is $779. The prices range on, again, if you join if you have a membership with him, you probably get this for a lot cheaper, or you can shop around. I've seen them, anywhere from $600 to $700 for this motor. And you can see the price difference now. If we hop back over to the list. So instead of $1,000 between the motor case system and the reload, you're saving about $400, maybe possibly $500 on your cost of your build. So if I scroll down there real quick, I spent $23.56. You minus $500 off that. Now you're down to $1,850 roughly. I think that's the second largest decision on your level 3 cert. One is, what are you going to do about a kit and which direction you go? That's a big cost factor. And then the second is, your motor. It's very expensive once you get to L3. I was going to go with the DMS motor because I did not have the money to buy a reload or system. I was fortunate. I was able to save up and buy this. The advantages are, if you can purchase this, now you have something you can use over and over again. And the cost of flying level 3 just dropped. Instead of you imagine trying to buy that 1350 motor over and over again, you can get a deal for an M motor on average, probably like $320 $20 to $350. Like I said, you shop around, you can be pretty thrifty. You wait till Black Friday, in November. A lot of vendors online have some good deals. All right, next on the list is the 8 5/16 stainless steel U-bolts. I believe I got that as a set for $48. And then I wanted stainless steel nuts and then the washers to go with it. A little expensive. I spent, so that's $50, $60, $72 on just the U-bolt hardware. You could go galvanized. There's nothing really wrong with it. They're not as strong, but if you stay with the same thickness, 5/16, I don't think you'd have a problem. It's just if you can afford it, the stainless steel, again, is stronger and it is easier to clean. The galvanized, if you don't clean it right away, they just get I don't know, they just get a film over them and they get grubby and they don't clean right. Okay, in the next section here, the wood for the sled and bulk plates. This is for the electronics bay. I just went to Home Depot, bought a 1/4 inch sheet of plywood, $22. It was a pre-cut sheet, 2 feet by 4 feet, plenty there. And then all I use for the charge wells is PVC end caps, and I use 1 inch diameter versions of them. And got bolts and everything for them, and $12 for those done. You could go with there's a lot of other companies. I really like the PVC end caps. I mean, they're really stout. They're they're pretty heavy duty. They have a really flat end bottom on them, so you can epoxy them down and then drill and bolt them into place. So my switches I got from Missile Works. Those rotary switches, I really like them. No right or wrong how you want to do it. I know you can twist tie your switches. There's Bluetooth, there's magnet. I just went with this. Just simple, just something that works for me. And this build also, this price is assuming that you have altimeters already, which you should have altimeters. If you're going level 3, you need experience with the altimeters. So that $2,300 does not include altimeters. So I bought nylon spacers and the 440 bolt nuts for the altimeter. The nylon spacers are just to pick up the altimeter, so you're not bolting it flat on the board. The sensor needs to be able to sample air, and if you have it pressed against the board, it can't. Again, local hardware store, Arbachon's, they have all this stuff, plenty of stock. It's cheap. I just went there and grabbed it. Okay, the 4 terminal blocks for the E-matches. That's going on top of the bulk plate. I end up bypassing that. I didn't like that idea. I just felt like it was for a cert flight. It was another fail or another fail point. So I just opt out of that. So I really, I bought them. They're on there, but then I just end up not using them. They get dirty when on my other rockets. Even though when I tape them and I try to protect them, they just tend to they still get soot on. So I've been shying away from them more and more. And here, the threaded rods for the eBay. I didn't buy anything special. It's just galvanized 5/16 threaded rod. Again, local hardware store. I just bought it. They're, for $8. I got like a 6-foot length. Plenty there. This right here, 2 battery clips. The 9 volts with clips and batteries. I did not end up doing that. Talking to more and more people. They like the LiPo batteries, so I did end up fitting the Jupiter 4, my level 3 project, with LiPo batteries instead. And that ended up being, I think, a peace of mind that day with LDS 42 for anyone that was there. It was crazy. We certed on Saturday, so the winds were insane. The cloud deck was up and down, and they were holding rockets back. I think my rocket was out there for I don't know. It seemed like 2 hours before they launched it because they were waiting for the cloud deck to get high enough. And then once they got, they're watching the weather, they would send rockets up as the cloud deck was high enough so that you're not shooting rockets through the clouds, which we shouldn't be doing. So I had a peace of mind using the LiPo battery. I knew I had bought some, or actually my friend Bob Valding had bought me some to try out, and he got some really, were big batteries, plenty of juice, peace of mind. Those altimeters could have sat out there all day, no problem. So I never had an issue with 9 volt, but when it was a cert flight, I did feel better having the LiPos. Okay, so that's that section. That's all the fins and some of the hardware stuff. Oh, I'm scrolling around here pretty quick. Okay, the next section is the nose cone modification. This is something that you don't have to do. I felt better doing it, and I've done it on other rockets. I take the Lock 7.5-inch nose cone and I cut the end of the shoulder off with all the plastic loops, and then I glue in 2 bulk plates in there, and then I have basically like center rings, and then I buy a 3-inch like mailing tube, and I just put the tube through there. That way I have a payload section in there, and I put U-bolts that are threaded, that have threaded rods going all the way to both parts of the bulk plates. It makes it a much better attachment point, and I have a video. I believe I covered that in the whole build section for this, the journey to level 3. So you don't have to do that, but it really wasn't. I mean, you look at the cost of doing that. I already had plywood left over from the doing everything else to the rocket, so it really wasn't much buying. You didn't have to buy any more plywood. But the cost, $20, it's just a lot of time. It's a lot of customization. If you are fiberglassing your rocket, you really don't have to worry about it. I was also worried about not having enough weight in the nose, because you get this big, it's 10 pounds of M motor with the reload. You got the motor case, the aero pack, all that stuff is a lot of weight on the bottom end of the rocket. I wanted to be able to add weight, and that's what you can see right here. Clay for the nose cone. I buy 2 pounds packages of clay, and I break those up into 2-pound sections, and I believe that ended up with 3 I had 3 2-pound sections, so I just slide them in 2 pounds at a time, and I just test the balance of the rocket out loaded. If I feel good where the center of gravity is compared to the center of pressure, I think that's what I did. I left it with 4 pounds in a nose cone. I felt pretty good with that. But again, that is for modifying the lock nose cone. You can do that if you want. If not, no biggie. But I like modifying stuff, so I can't leave anything alone. Okay, on to paint and decals. This section here is just however you want your rocket to look. There's different methods. You can use rattle can spray paint that you buy from any store. You can, some people use automotive quality paints, and they have, the big spray gun with the air compressor, the paint guns, and where you get that incredible finish. I just did the rattle can, just spray paint I bought from Home Depot. I ended up getting 2 cans of the blue, 2 cans of yellow. I used gray primer for the base, and then once it was painted with the blue and yellow, I did buy gold glitter that I hit with it because I wanted like some metallic flakes in it. It looks great in the sun. And then to seal it all in, I bought 2 cans of clear coat, which I think is a good idea. It really helps the paint from not getting all marked up too fast. And then I did custom cut decals. I just used a vendor on eBay. He was really good, fast. There's a bunch of them on there. I just went there, and because I knew what I wanted, the size, and I wanted a massive decal that covered almost the whole length of the rocket. And I got my newtons per second YouTube channel on there. That was another big decal, so that was good. And that's part of the custom kit. Now, if you buy a kit, then you can they'll come with their own decals, or you could use Sticker Shock. He's really good customizing decals. And this brings to the cost $2,084. All right, the final section, recovery gear. Now, I only used the 1-inch tubular nylon webbing for shock cord, where I make my own parachutes, the Happy Chutes. That nylon webbing is really easy for me to use and sew up instead of using Kevlar and all this other stuff. It's pros and cons. Tubular nylon is great, it's cheaper, but it does get kind of dry and brittle as more injection charges are getting over it, sitting on it. I do put Nomex sleeves over it to help protect the ends where the ejection charges are. It does help, but that heat does get to it, even though it's wrapped in that stuff. You can go with Kevlar, which is, that's bulletproof. You'll never have to change it. But pros and cons, the Kevlar, there's no give to it. If your rocket ends up fully extending out on apogee, or your main comes out, that's a lot of stress on on each end of the rocket, and there's no give really to the Kevlar. It doesn't stretch. Tubular nylon, if you happen to fully extend the rocket out because the ejection charges maybe a little strong or whatever happens, if they fully extend out, there's some give. It'll stretch a little bit. And again, there's a whole pros and cons with all that. And a lot, you could talk for quite a bit, what's better. But for me, I haven't had any issues with tubular nylon, but at some point I may want to go with Kevlar, or at least get Kevlar on the first, say, 5 feet that is attached closest to the ejection point. That's probably smarter. Then you can use the rest with tubular nylon. Again, it's all personal preference. There's no right or wrong. And for the quick links, I use 5/16 of an inch stainless steel quick links. And I got an 8-pack on Amazon for $27. And these things are stout. They're very heavy duty. That's 2 pounds just in quick links. I weighed them. So, and they handle a lot. Do you have to do that? No. You can get ones that are a little smaller. You can use galvanized. I really don't think it's a problem. Again, I just wanted, I didn't mind the extra weight because I really don't want to go that high. And I just wanted to make sure everything was super strong. But these were overkill. Now that I've seen it, I've used them a few times. There's no reason to use something that big. But I got a deal on Amazon for them. Parachute, again, like a lot of this depends on if you're customizing or you're going with a kit. Now, I make my own parachutes, again, so I spent $130 in materials and made my own 12-foot elliptical, which worked very well. Honestly, it was too good. The altimeters read at some point the rocket was going up. So I only needed about a 10-foot elliptical, or I could have got away with an 8. Depends on the field. You have a nice field. I know some of my 8s I've tested on a 48-plus rocket, and it still was like 16 feet per second. So this was overkill. This price could have went way down. I would have used way less materials. So honestly, this could have been down, like, because I'm making it myself. It could be like $50-$60. And then I made extra large Nomex blankets to protect the parachute. Now those were 36 by 36 inch, huge, plenty of room to put a parachute in, roll it up in a nice burrito. I made my own drogue chute. That was like, I believe, a 28-inch drogue chute. The large rail buttons bought from Rick Comshaw, Wild Man of Connecticut, my local, or my L3cc, and that brings the total cost of $2,356. Again, you can save money on, the motor. You drop it, probably by $500, and that's going to get you, like I said, that 1800, 1850. There's a few other things that you can do to cut costs. You don't need so much stainless steel stuff, or I think bare minimal for an L3 project, if you went with Lock Precision's kit, let's just say we'll go with their stuff, it averages like $500, and you're not going to glass it. Their tubes are they're pretty strong, the 7.5-inch stuff, and you could get away with doing your cert with, I believe, without having to wrap that in fiberglass. So if you didn't buy fiberglass, you just buying the kit. These 7.5-inch kits can go through quite a bit of epoxy, the 7.5-inch versions. So I would recommend getting a quart of the West Systems and some of the 404 thickener, and that's like a powder you can add to the West Systems. So you get the quart, and then it's the hardener that would go with the quart. There's two different versions. There's a slow cure and fast cure. I would just go with the slow cure stuff. I forget the numbers exactly what they are. And then you buy the 404 thickener. It's like a powder, and then you mix it in. You can keep mixing that stuff in. You can get that West Systems epoxy thick like toothpaste. You can just apply it, and it doesn't go anywhere. It just stays right there. So all three of those things, I believe, is something like $140. But that is money well spent. Well spent. Especially you're going to be doing internal, external fillets on your center rings. I mean, you can just chew through epoxy. So we'll just add $140 to that. The kit is probably going to be about, I'm just going to say about $80 to ship. We'll add that on there because I didn't add that cost in. And then, now, if you don't buy a reload motor system and you go with that 1350 75 millimeter, it's probably the cheapest bet, then that average cost, I'm just going to put it at $700. It could be a little bit more. I'll put $750 because shipping is going to be, that's a lot unless you go through a local vendor. Some of the lock kits are 98 millimeter. I don't know if they come with an adapter. If they don't, you just have to get an adapter for it, or use the Aeropack setup. And that would be, if they don't come with an Aeropack's it's about $100 shipped, something like that. You're talking $1,570 compared to what I spent is $2,356. If you went with glass kits, your money could go up to getting closer to $3,000. The only way you could save any more than this, I believe, if you knew somebody that had a case and you bought a reload, but then you're at the risk of anything happening to that case. If there's a Kato or the rocket lands hard and there's damage to the motor case, then you're buying someone a brand new case. So I wouldn't recommend borrowing. I don't like that myself. Half the time, if I'm going to borrow a case from somebody, that means I don't have money to buy it in the first place. So definitely don't have money to buy one if I mess it up on somebody. So yeah, I mean, if you could borrow one, that would drop your cost down, because then you're buying a reload and not a $700 single-use motor. That could drop that down to $300. So you're down to $1,270 for your build, and that's getting more reasonable. Or if you can go down even further, and you can go like sonotube route and make your own nose cone and all that stuff, and you might be able to drop this way down in price. But that's a pretty aggressive custom build. You could use Staples 3-inch mailing tubes. They fit perfect as a motor mount tube. I've done that before on an M motor. They hold up just fine. So there's there's a lot of options there. I mean, you can get away with bare minimum, but it's a hard route. But this road right here, you know, if you go with like a lock kit, there's a lot of support. A lot of people have built those kits that they have, and there's a lot, you know, like I said, a lot of support. You need to ask a question, you know, you're gonna get a lot of help. But like if you go Wildman route, these fiberglass kits, I mean, there's no replacement for those. Those are top of the line. They're beautiful. They hold up to a lot of stress, and they will carry you to like any size motor that you want. Pretty much that will fit in there without worry. You know, and buying kits from company like Lock to do your L3, you're getting everything with it. It's a kit. You know, you got your parachute, you got your harness, you got everything with it except for altimeters, your motor, I believe, and that's all you need. Where the Wildman, you know, kits or any of these fiberglass companies, it's a bare minimal. You know, you still need to buy your recovery gear. You need to get hardware and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, just shop around. My best advice, and you know, wherever you feel comfortable with. Again, I love doing custom built stuff, so that's where I excelled at, and that's where I'm continuing to go. Eventually, I'd like to get in some of these kits because Wildman does. I keep going back to Wildman, but they have a lot of awesome kits. I'd love to get my hands on some of their 6 or 8-inch kits someday. All right, that wraps it up for my coverage of what it costs to do an L3 project from my perspective and the things I went through and how I shop for everything. I hope that helps. Maybe gives you a little idea on costs. You know, I know there's, you know, other guys out there that put up their videos covering this, and you know, it just gives you another perspective on how this is all, you know, the cost and what goes into it, and where we're getting our materials from, or you know, whatever. So I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.